Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so that you never miss any video lesson from Rao's IAS Study Circle. Join the official Telegram channel of Rao's IAS Study Circle to stay updated and get all the materials on the Telegram. The link to the channel can be found in the description box. Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified Supplement. Now in this edition we shall take up the Hindu newspaper dated 12th December 2021 and important news appearing in the explained section of Indian Express. Now these are the list of news appearing in the Hindu newspaper dated 12th December 2021 and from the explained section of Indian Express. And the timestamping for this news has been provided in the description box below. So on this note, let's start our today's discussion from UPSC Prelims and Mains perspective. So let's take up our first news appearing in the Hindu newspaper dated 12th December 2021. Now this news appeared as a snapshots on page number 10 with respect to CRISPR-Cas9 usage. So this news mentions about single-sex litters. It says that using CRISPR-Cas9 tools, scientists have created female-only and male-only mice litters with 100% efficiency. That is, they have developed a technique using CRISPR-Cas9 technology whereby to develop either only male mice or female mice. Now this topic of CRISPR-Cas9 becomes important. As you can see, a question was asked in the prelims of 2019 and also in 2018. Now this topic becomes important from the perspective of general science in the prelims examination. So this news highlighting about creating only female or male mice was published in the Nature Communications, and this particular mechanism uses two-part genetic system to inactivate embryos shortly after their fertilization. Now it is at this stage when the CRISPR-Cas9 technology is used so that a particular embryo is not developed further. So this news mentions about the fact that this technology uses two-part genetic system to inactivate embryos after their fertilization. Now first of all, let us go through this question which was asked by UPSC, as it will make us understand that what we need to know about CRISPR-Cas9. It says that what is Cas9 protein that is often mentioned in the news. Options were A. A molecular scissors used in targeted gene editing. B. A biosensor used in the accurate detection of pathogens in patients. C. A gene that makes plants pest resistant. And D. A herbicidal substance synthesized in genetically modified crops. Now further in the year 2018, another question was asked with respect to match the following pairs. So the options were terms sometimes seen in the news and their context or topic. And one of the terms provided in this question was CRISPR-Cas9. However, it was related to particle physics. So in this regard, we must know about CRISPR-Cas9. Now CRISPR-Cas9 is a gene editing tool and its working involves two processes. First with respect to the enzyme known as Cas9, and the second is with respect to the guide RNA, or also referred as gRNA. So both these mechanisms are utilized to make mutation or any cut in any particular strand of a DNA. So the Cas9 enzyme is used as a molecular scissors which cut strands of DNA at specific location. For example, here. Now it is exactly here where the role of guide RNA or gRNA comes into picture, as it guides the Cas9 enzyme to the area which we have selected for the DNA to be replaced. So the gRNA or the guide RNA is a pre-designed RNA sequence which binds to the DNA, and its pre-designed sequence guides the Cas9 enzymes to the right part of the genome, that is here. So this is how the CRISPR-Cas9 technology functions, using the enzyme Cas9 as molecular scissors and also the guide RNA, which is a pre-designed RNA sequence which binds to the DNA at the specific location. Now the use of CRISPR-Cas9 was also awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for the year 2020, for which Emmanuel Charpentier and Jennifer Doudna were awarded this Nobel Prize in Chemistry for discovering one of the gene technology's sharpest tools, namely the CRISPR-Cas9 genetic scissors. Now it says that researchers can use these to change the DNA of animals, plants, and also microorganisms with extremely high precision. And this is exactly what this news particularly mentions about. It says that this CRISPR-Cas9 technology has revolutionized the molecular life sciences, brought new opportunities for plant breeding, is contributing to innovative cancer therapies, and may make the dream of curing inherited disease come true in near future. So, understanding the functioning of CRISPR-Cas9 technology becomes important from our prelims and also mains perspective. So, this question asked by UPSC in 2019, here the correct answer was A, that is Cas9 protein is a molecular scissors used in targeted gene editing. And in this question asked in 2018, only option 2 was correctly matched, as blockchain technology is with respect to digital or cryptocurrency, whereas Belly2 experiment is with respect to particle physics, and CRISPR-Cas9 technology is with respect to gene editing. So here the correct answer was B, that is 2 only. Now, after understanding about the CRISPR-Cas9 technology, let's understand that how this technology has been used to produce only female or male mice. Now, as we all know that male has two sex chromosomes, namely X chromosome and Y chromosome, whereas females have two X chromosome only. Now, the same technology has been utilized here with respect to the two elements of CRISPR-Cas9, and these two elements are the Cas9 enzyme, which acts as a molecular scissor to cut the strand of DNA, which allows the scientist to alter a specific region, and the guide RNA, which carries the Cas9 to the particular location on the genome. Now here the team of the researchers used either the X chromosome of the male or the Y chromosome of the female, and this entire process CRISPR-Cas9 technology was also used. So if only X chromosome was used, then a female mice would be produced, whereas if only a Y chromosome was used, then only a male mice would be produced. So this is how the team placed one element of the system on the father's X or Y chromosome, ensuring 100% efficiency of producing either female mice or only male mice. And in this process, TOP1 enzyme, also known as topoisomerase 1 enzyme, was also used for DNA replication and repair. So if a news appears with respect to the use of topoisomerase enzyme, then it is also with respect to the CRISPR-Cas9 technology, as this enzyme relaxes the supercoiled DNA. So in this particular news, you need to know about the working of the CRISPR-Cas9 technology, which utilizes two aspects, namely the use of Cas9 molecular scissors and also the use of guide RNA. So with this understanding, let's move to the next article of the Hindu newspaper. Now the other news also appears on page number 10 in the science section in the Hindu newspaper. Now this news mentions about a mystery in meteorites. So it says that what information do beads of glass in meteorites hold? And here this information is with respect to chondrules, which are beads of glass in meteorites. Now this topic with respect to meteorites and chondrules and its formation becomes important from the prelims perspective as a part of general science, and questions can be asked with respect to meteorites, meteors, or even meteorites. So first of all, let us understand the difference between meteorites, meteors, and meteorite. Now meteorites can be said to be any object in the space which ranges in size from dust grains to small asteroids. So anything outside the Earth's atmosphere in the solar system, from the size of a dust grain to that of an asteroid, can be said to be meteorites. So when these space objects or asteroids enter Earth's atmosphere or of any other planet's atmosphere at very high speed, then they burn up because of the atmospheric friction. And because of this burning, it creates fireballs or shooting stars. And these shooting stars are then called meteors. Now when meteorites fall into Earth's atmosphere or any other planet's atmosphere and hit the ground, then it is called a meteorite, as it says that when a meteorite survives a trip through the atmosphere and hits the ground, that is, it survives the burning caused due to atmospheric friction and hits the ground, then it is referred as meteorite. So it is in this news, it talks about the beads of glasses which are witnessed or noticed in meteorites, which are also referred as chondrules. So the question becomes, is it important to know about the minerals or know about the constituents of these meteorites? Now if you can see in this picture, this is an iron meteorite which was encountered by NASA's Curiosity Mars rover. And this iron meteorite is called Lebanon. Now this Lebanon is about 2 yards or 2 meters wide. So this Lebanon meteorite must have hit the ground of Mars. Now these meteorites that fall on Earth or any other planet represent some of the original or diverse materials that formed the planets billions of years ago. Now some of these meteorites contain beads of glass inside the meteorite, which is referred as chondrules, and these chondrules can be silicate, metal or sulfides. Now these chondrules, which are beads of glass inside the meteorites, they have experienced melting in the nebula or the clouds before becoming part of meteorite parent bodies. So by studying about these meteorites, we can learn about their early conditions and also processes in the solar system's history as to what are the constituents of these meteorites and what are the processes with respect to cooling which the meteorite had gone through. So it says that these include the age and composition of differently planetary building blocks, the temperatures achieved at the surface and interiors of asteroids, and the degree to which materials were shocked by impacts in the past. So all these information becomes relevant with respect to understanding about the formation of the universe. Now these chondrules, which are beads of glass inside the meteorites, has a record of variety of processes which has occurred in the early solar nebula. As the silicate metals or sulfides, which are part of chondrules, have experienced this melting and also cooling as they become the part of the meteorite parent bodies. Now talking about varieties of chondrules, which are beads of glasses inside the meteorites, generally they can be classified into type 1 and type 2 meteorites. Now type 1 meteorites are FeO poor meteorite, that is poor in iron oxide, and type 2 meteorites are rich in iron oxide. Now type 1 meteorite can be further subdivided into 1A and 1B. So type 1A chondrules are poor in silicon dioxide, that is SiO2, whereas 1B chondrules are rich in silicon dioxide. Now the chondrules poor in silicon dioxide has high proportion of olivine phenocryst. Now the mineral olivine is a magnesium iron silicate, whereas the chondrule 1B, which is rich in silicon dioxide, has high proportion of pyroxene phenocryst. Now these pyroxenes are a group of important rock forming isosilicate minerals which are generally found in igneous and metamorphic rocks. So these are some of the important highlights with respect to varieties of chondrules overall, which can be divided into type 1, which are poor in ferrous oxide, and type 2, which are rich in ferrous oxide, that is rich in iron. And the chondrules poor in ferrous oxide can be further subdivided into 1A, which are poor in silicon dioxide, those which have high proportion of olivine phenocryst, and 1B, which are rich in silicon dioxide, which have high proportion of pyroxene phenocryst. So it's important to understand about the chondrules and also their formation, as it also helps in understanding about the creation of the universe and also about the processes which the chondrules and also the meteorites have gone through in their entire journey. So in this article, you must understand the difference between meteorites, meteors and meteorite, and you should also know about chondrules, their formation, its importance, and also the variety of chondrules which can be iron rich, sulfide rich, or even rich in some other minerals. So with the understanding of these meteorites and chondrules, let's move to the next article of the Hindu newspaper. Now the next news to be taken up also appears in the science section on page number 10. It says heat shock and cold sensitivity, how chaperone proteins work to maintain normal cellular function. Now this news highlights about the importance of chaperone proteins, which helps the proteins in their entire journey of protein synthesis with respect to folding of proteins into a 3D structure, because proteins needs precise three-dimensional shape or structure to become functional entities. So unless the proteins folds into a three-dimensional structure, they do not become functional and rather results in misfolding of proteins, which can also lead to certain diseases in humans. So in this backdrop of folding of proteins, it is the chaperone proteins which helps in the entire process of folding of proteins, which takes place into four stages. So we shall look into all these aspects with respect to this particular article. Now this article becomes important both from our prelims and the mains perspective. Questions can be asked regarding folding of proteins, the impact of misfolding of proteins, and the role played by these chaperone proteins. And this topic gets covered under general science in the prelims examination, and in the mains gets covered under GS paper 3, especially with respect to science and technology and developments and their applications and effects in everyday life. Now, in the entire process of protein synthesis, folding of protein is a very complex process and involves four stages. And through these four stages, the 3D shapes are acquired. So, these four stages involves primary structure, secondary structure, tertiary structure, and quaternary structure. So, these are the different structures which a protein goes through while the formation of protein into a 3D structure. Now, as you can see in this particular picture, this is the primary structure of a protein, and it says that the primary structure refers to the linear sequence of amino acid residues in the polypeptide chain, that is this particular chain. Now, this chain then further results into a alpha helix or a beta sheet, and this is the secondary structure of the protein in the protein synthesis. So here it says that the secondary structure is generated by formation of hydrogen bonds between the atoms. So in the secondary structure, hydrogen bonds are formed. And these hydrogen bonds helps to fold the chains into either alpha helices or beta sheets. Now from this secondary structure, the protein synthesis moves to the tertiary sector where the proper 3D shape is acquired. So it says that the tertiary structure is formed by folding of the secondary structure, that is that of the beta sheet or alpha helix, into one another. And here the tertiary structure of protein is the geometric shape of the protein. And it says that it usually has a peptide chain as a backbone with one or more secondary structures. Now the tertiary structure is determined by interactions and bonding of amino acid side chains in the protein. So this is the three-dimensional figure of a tertiary structure of a protein. And lastly, the quaternary structure, which results from folded amino acid chains in tertiary structures interacting further with each other, giving rise to a functional protein such as hemoglobin or DNA polymerase. So in this entire process of protein synthesis, from primary structure to quaternary structure where the proteins actually become functional, this entire process is helped by the chaperone proteins, because there is also a possibility that this folding of proteins either at tertiary phase or at quaternary phase might not be possible, which might result in misfolding of proteins leading to cellular aggregates, which can pose certain cellular hindrances in the further process. So it is here where the role of chaperone proteins becomes very important. So we understand that the role of molecular chaperones becomes very important, or chaperone proteins becomes very important, as this folding of proteins from primary structure to quaternary structure does not happen by itself, and it is here where it is assisted by a bunch of proteins named as molecular chaperones. So it says that without molecular chaperones, newly synthesized proteins may result in tangled mess of insoluble mass, which overall may either hinder the cellular process or may also result in number of diseases. So regarding the molecular chaperones, this article says that these chaperones or these class of proteins belongs to the class of heat shock proteins or stress response proteins. Now approx 1 to 2% of our proteins are in the form of shock proteins or these molecular chaperones. So we understand that during the protein synthesis, these unfolded proteins are generated as part of normal growth. And it is here where the role of molecular chaperone or chaperone proteins come into play. However, there are also certain misfolded proteins which arise due to cellular stress, which can be either heat shock or other kind of stress. Further, regarding molecular chaperones, these can be classified as HSP60, HSP70, HSC70 or HSP90, and these assist in proper folding of proteins and also prevent protein misfolding or aggregation. Another important highlight about these chaperones is that they do not form part of final folded structures. So these are some of the important highlights about the chaperone proteins. Now, after understanding about the role of molecular chaperones or chaperone proteins, let us also go through the number of diseases resulting from misfolding of proteins. So the first disease highlighted here is the Parkinson's disease, which happens because of a wrongly folded alpha-synuclein protein in the neurons. So we understand that wrongly folded protein in the neurons results in Parkinson's disease. Now regarding Alzheimer's disease, it mentions about formation of plaque because of aggregates of amyloid beta peptides or amyloid beta proteins. Now this formation of these aggregates results in accumulation of amyloid fibrils, which is toxic in nature, and this results to destruction of neurons. So again, on one hand we are seeing results of wrongly folded proteins, whereas on the other hand we are witnessing an accumulation of amyloid proteins, which is not only toxic but also results in the destruction of neurons, which leads to a neurodegenerative disorders leading to Alzheimer's disease. The next disease is cataract. Now this is because of aberrant or unnatural folding of crystallins of eye. Now these crystallins are structural proteins of eye which is water soluble and is present in the lens and cornea of the eye. Now these structural proteins, also referred as alpha crystalline, are themselves the chaperones or function as the chaperone. So again, unnatural folding of these structural proteins, namely the crystallins, results in cataract. The news also mentions about single R116G mutation of the alpha crystalline, which results in autosomal dominant congenital cataract. So again, cataract results because of aberrant folding of the structural proteins of the eye. The next disease is the familial cold autoinflammatory syndrome. Now, here disorders relating to cold or skin rashes or joint problems are related to cold sensitivity, and these are caused because of mutation in proteins which regulate inflammation. So, in normal circumstances, the protein, namely HSC70, which is also a chaperone protein, helps the mutated proteins to fold correctly. So here, the function of this HSC70 protein, which is a chaperone protein, is to allow the mutated protein to fold correctly. However, this does not take place or this does not happen during the cold conditions because the protein HSC70 itself is slightly altered in shape and hence does not perform the role of chaperone protein perfectly and accordingly is not able to correct the foldings of various mutations, resulting in familial cold autoinflammatory syndrome. Now, apart from this, this article also mentions about the role of HSP70 and HSP90, which are chaperone proteins, which overall helps in the proper folding of proteins. Now, here the news says that these proteins also acts as villain. Why? Because it helps in folding of cancerous proteins. So the protein which is prepared by the tumor, both these molecular chaperone helps in the folding of these cancerous proteins or helps in their proper mutation, thereby allowing tumor progression in the body. So effectively, in certain cases, HSP70 and HSP90 also helps tumor progression because it helps the folding of these proteins in a proper manner. So overall, these can be said to be some of the issues which results from misfolding of proteins. Thus, this article with respect to folding of proteins and also the role played by chaperone proteins becomes important both from our prelims and also mains perspective under GS paper 3. With this, let's move to the next article. So after discussing important news in the Hindu newspaper, let's move to the section of Indian Express Explained. And the first news here is regarding the intangible cultural heritage of Kolkata's Durga Puja. So this news highlights that UNESCO's Intergovernmental Committee for the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage has put Durga Puja of Kolkata on the representative list of intangible cultural heritage of humanity. So this news becomes important mainly from the perspective of current events of national importance and also from the perspective of history and culture. So in this news, let us understand about this concept of intangible cultural heritage of humanity. So the term intangible cultural heritage has changed over decades as understood by UNESCO. Now, cultural heritage does not end at understanding only about monuments or collections of objects, but rather it also includes traditions or living expressions which are inherited from our ancestors and passed on to our descendants. So, this intangible cultural heritage also includes passing of certain practices or culture or tradition across generations, that is, from one generation to other. And this includes oral tradition, performing arts, social practices, rituals, festive events, knowledge, and also practicing concerning nature and the universe, or even knowledge and skills to produce traditional crafts. So, we understand that intangible cultural heritage is not only restricted to monuments or collections of objects, but also includes traditions or living expressions, including oral traditions, performing arts, social practices, rituals, festival events, knowledge and practices which concerns nature and universe, and also knowledge and skills to produce traditional crafts, and such practices which are passed from generations to generations. Now, even though intangible cultural heritage may be fragile, but this is an important factor to maintain cultural diversity in the face of growing globalization. So, of late, considering the impact of globalization, UNESCO has also considered an important factor with respect to maintaining cultural diversity. It further says that the importance of intangible cultural heritage lies in wealth of knowledge and skills which is transmitted across generations as highlighted here. And it further says that it also has an impact on social and economic value of transmission of this particular knowledge or skill or practice. And it is also relevant for a minority groups and also for the mainstream social groups within a state, and its conservation and preservation is also important for both developing and also developed states. So it is in this regard this news highlights that according to UNESCO, cultural heritage does not end at monuments and collections of objects, but also includes traditions or living expressions inherited from our ancestors and passed on to our descendants. It further says that intangible cultural heritage, according to UNESCO, is traditional, contemporary, and living at the same time. Further, it is also inclusive in nature, representative in nature, and community based. An intangible cultural heritage is an important factor in maintaining cultural diversity, as we have seen in the face of growing globalization, and also an understanding of this intangible cultural heritage of different communities helps with intercultural dialogue, that is, interaction within different communities, and also encourages mutual respect for other ways of life, that is, mutual respect for each other's culture and also tradition and various practices. So overall, we can say that the salient features of intangible cultural heritage can be said to be traditional, contemporary, and living at the same time. It also has an element of inclusiveness, social cohesion, and it also gives a sense of identity and continuity, thereby providing a link from our past through the present into our future. And this link from the past to the present and towards the future also encourages or contributes to social cohesion within the community, encourages a sense of identity and responsibility, which helps individuals to feel part of one or different communities within the society at large. Now, the next two important features of intangible cultural heritage are their representative nature and the fact that it is community based. And both these points are interlinked. It says that the intangible cultural heritage can only be a heritage when it is recognized by the communities at large, groups, or individuals which create, maintain, and transmit such practices. And without the recognition of these practices by the community, no one else can decide for them that a given expression or practice is their heritage. So, recognition by the community as such is very important for any practices to be understood or recognized as intangible cultural heritage. And based on this recognition by the community, it also ensures its representative nature, as it says that intangible cultural heritage is not merely valued as cultural good for its exclusivity or its exceptional value, but rather it thrives on its basis in communities and depends on those whose knowledge of traditions, skills, and customs are passed on to the rest of the community from generation to generation. So, overall, these can be said to be some of the salient features of intangible cultural heritage. Now, as per the website of UNESCO, these are the elements on the list of intangible cultural heritage for India. It includes Kutiyatam, which is a Sanskrit theatre, the tradition of Vedic chanting, Ram Leela, which is the traditional performance of the Ramayana, Raman, which is a religious festival and ritual theatre of the Garhwal Himalayas, Chow dance practiced in Jharkhand and West Bengal, Kalbela folk songs and dances of Rajasthan, Mudiyetu, which is a ritual theatre and dance drama of Kerala, Durga Puja of Kolkata, Buddhist chantings of Ladakh, and also includes recitations of sacred Buddhist texts in the trans-Himalayan Ladakh region, Sanskritana, which is ritual singing, drumming and dancing of Manipur, traditional brass and copper craft of utensil making among the Tatheras of Jandiala Guru in Punjab, Nowruz, which is the New Year celebration of Parsis, yoga, and also Kumbh Mela. So these are some of the elements on the list of intangible cultural heritage for India on the website of UNESCO. So this topic becomes important mainly from the prelims perspective. However, questions can be asked in the section of GS paper 1 in the mains examination with respect to history and culture. With this, let's move to the next news from the explained section of Indian Express. Now the next news to be taken up from the explained section is about the Log4j vulnerability, which is also known as Log4 shell. Now this is a cybersecurity flaw based on open source library. Now this open source library means that any developer of an application can visit this particular open source library which contains a set of codes. So now what has happened is that this open source, which means anyone who can enter this particular library can also take away the content and overall can control a particular application. So it says that a new vulnerability named Log4 shell is being touted as one of the worst cybersecurity flaws to have been discovered. And this vulnerability is based on an open source logging library used in most of the applications by enterprises including Google, Apple, Microsoft, along with the government agencies. So basically the hackers can not only visit this open source library which contains various codes of different applications of different entities including government agencies, but can also remotely control these different applications of different companies. So it says that the exploits for this vulnerability are already being tested by hackers, as it grants them access to an application and could potentially let them run malicious software on a device or servers. So basically by hacking into this open source library, the attackers can not only control the application or system of other companies, but can also introduce a particular malware or introduce a particular virus into this open source library with respect to any particular application. So this vulnerability through these codes can threaten the security of banks, tech companies, government agencies, and any other kind of organization, including the big tech companies. Now, a similar cyber vulnerability was heard in 2014 named Heartbleed, and because of this, it also resulted in theft of approx 4.5 million healthcare records from US hospitals operators. So this Log4 shell vulnerability allows the hackers to see all activities of an application, and along with this allows the hacker to control and also operate another applications or system of any other entity or organization. Now this is also known as remote code execution attacks, that is not only controlling but also operating the application or system of other organization, and through this open source library they can also induce any virus or malware into the application or the system of other companies. Now, so far, most of the attacks through this open source library have been in the area of cryptocurrency mining. But there are also new exploits which is possible, especially with respect to hacking the iCloud of Apple devices and also hacking the online gaming system, mostly those who are Java based. So these can be said to be some of the problems associated with this vulnerability referred as log4 shell. So it says that the vulnerability is dubbed log4 shell and is officially this particular number, that is CVE 2021442228. Now this CVE number is the unique number which is given to each vulnerability discovered around the world. Now you must remember this name log4 shell as a cybersecurity flaw or a vulnerability. As you can see in 2018, question on similar terms was asked by UPSC. So the question was the terms WannaCry, Petya and Eternal Blue sometimes mentioned in the news recently are related to. Options were A. Exoplanets, B. Cryptocurrency, C. Cyber attacks and D. Mini satellites. In this the correct answer was C, which is cyber attack. So again on similar terms, another question can be asked with respect to log4 shell, which is a vulnerability for cyber security. So this news with respect to log4 shell as a vulnerability for cybersecurity becomes important mainly from the perspective of science and technology in the prelims and also mains examination here with respect to GS paper 3. So with this discussion, let's take up the question for the day. Now based on our discussion, this becomes your practice question for the day. It says, consider the following statements. First, molecular chaperones including HSP60, HSP70 and HSP90 assist in the folding of unfolded and misfolded polypeptides by stabilization of folding intermediates and prevention of protein misfolding and aggregation. The second statement says, misfolding of proteins can result into diseases such as cataract, Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. So the question is, which of the statements given above are correct? Options are A, 1 only, B, 2 only, C, both 1 and 2, and D, neither 1 nor 2. Now coming to the answer of yesterday's DNS, the question was which of the following are related to biodiversity conservation. Options were first, Cartagena Protocol, second, Nagoya Protocol, and third, Kyoto Protocol. In this, the correct answer becomes 1 and 2 as Kyoto Protocol is not with respect to biodiversity conservation. So the correct answer becomes B, that is 1 and 2 only. So with this we come to an end to today's discussion. Thank you for watching DNS Supplement.